Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are diving into the Happywise methodology. We're going to look at how to take corporate values from those nice-sounding words on a web page, the ones that sometimes frustrate us as employees, and actually transform them into a genuine, lived organizational culture. Let's dive right in. First up, the value gap. Let's look at a pretty startling reality about the disconnect between the values companies pin on their walls and what actually happens day to day. Get this, 80%. That is the massive majority of companies out there proudly declaring innovation as a core organizational value. And right behind that, 70% declare integrity. But here's the catch. Despite these huge numbers, research shows these stated values on their own, they have absolutely zero significant correlation with actual financial performance, employee engagement, or real workplace culture. Elizabeth Doty actually hit the nail on the head here. She said, the only values that matter are the ones we live every day. So the real problem we're facing is this massive gap between what an organization formally states and what it actually lives. And let me tell you, employees notice this gap with crystal clarity long before leadership ever does. Why? Because they're the ones dealing with the concrete consequences on the ground every single day. So why exactly does this gap exist? Let's break down the 4 common value traps that organizations typically fall into. Traps 1 and 2 are super common. Trap 1, thinking words are enough. Like believing a slick presentation magically creates culture. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. Culture is created by decisions and behaviors. Trap 2 is importing values. This is like trying to copy-paste the culture of a famous tech giant instead of discovering what your own people are already deeply committed to. People commit to values they feel are their own, not ones handed down in a slide deck. Then we have traps 3 and 4, abandoning the initiative right after the big launch and just expecting values to apply themselves. But true values are really only revealed when they're tested under pressure. You might declare transparency as a core pillar, but the real test is when a project goes completely south. Do you communicate that bad news early or do you hide it? You might declare care for people, but what actually happens to team well-being when there's intense pressure on quarterly results? To bridge this gap, we absolutely have to recognize this core truth. Leadership is communication. Actions always speak louder than words. In fact, leadership behavior is always the primary form of communication. Edgar Schein pointed out that transmitting culture isn't about what you said in some comfortable meeting room. It is entirely about what you did. It's the real priorities you reveal through your actions and decisions when things get difficult. Furthermore, moments shape culture, and we have to realize that not all moments carry the same cultural weight. The reference cases that truly shape your culture exist right at the intersection of 3 specific things: a leader's behavior when values are intensely under pressure, the genuine concrete conversations had about those values, and everyday consistent repetition. When those 3 elements align, that's when culture really solidifies. So how do we actively build this? Let's look at the 4 pillars of values. The science of happiness gives us specific, actionable frameworks for actually living these values out. These pillars form the absolute structural foundation of intentional well-being in an organization. And importantly, establishing them takes serious discipline and consistency over just short-term intensity. Let's walk through them. First, plus being. This is about internal congruence, asking the tough question, who are you when nobody's watching? Second is plus US. This is understanding that culture isn't abstract. It's built right there in everyday relationships and shared spaces. Third is plus discipline, the consistent repetition of simple, sustainable rituals. And fourth, plus positive chemistry. This means actively tuning into the emotional and physical signals of your team. Quite literally, how it feels to work there on a daily basis. Finally, let's talk about the 4 energies. For cultural integration to really stick, it has to span across 4 distinct human energies. To make values real, you need mental energy. That's absolute clarity on what concrete behaviors are expected. You also need emotional energy, feeling the tangible impact when values are respected or violated. Then there's physical energy, which is observing the actual level of tension or openness people bring to work. And lastly, spiritual energy. In this context, that means fostering a deep sense of belonging and meaning in the work. Without activating all 4 of these, your values are just abstract ideas. So if you're a leader looking to align your culture, this is the singular, vital question you have to ask yourself every single week. What did people observe this week? Not what I said, but what I did. Because ultimately, values aren't what you print on your website or write in your onboarding manuals. They're only what your organization practices, particularly when it's difficult and costly. Well, thanks for joining me on this explainer. As you head back to work tomorrow, take a look around and ask yourself, if a total stranger watched your team for just 1 hour, what values would they assume you have? Keep evaluating those daily behaviors, and I'll catch you in the next one.